We often make fun of the stupidity of The View, but also sometimes I think The View crosses over as a show, and there are a couple million people who watch it every day. It has an influence on the perspective of particularly, I think, a lot of low information Democrat voters. So if you're getting your politics from The View, I think you tend to be a low information Democrat voter. But this was a moment that stuck out to me. Here, their resident legal expert, Sonny Hostin, I just want you to hear the way she speaks about married white women for a moment. Play 24.
I have a similar theory, and it's borne out when you look at the studies and when you read books like it's a book that came out a long time ago about she owned property as well, meaning white women owned slaves as well. I think that white women in particular, want to protect the patriarchy here because it's to their benefit. Yeah. They want to make sure that their husbands do well. They want to make sure that their sons do well. They want to make sure that their children do well. And they want to make sure that they do well. Most of the women in some of these studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
Married white women fall in line. Well, interesting. She pointed out that there were white women who owned slaves. There were also black men who owned slaves in the South.
Yes.
Which is not
thousands
often,
of them.
Yes. Not often discussed part of history. It's interesting. How many people actually knew that listening to this? It's a fact. Libs will look at you like, oh, but they'll know, wait a second, that's a fact of history. So I think it's interesting. She goes, well, there were white women who owned slaves. What does that have to do with what's going on today? There were black men who owned slaves in the South, but you wouldn't bring that up in the context of what's happening today in politics and race relations in the country. People would think that was a bizarre point to make, and yet here we are. She's basically there's like it's just a resentful and strange little monologue she went on there. What was that all about? White women are propagating the patriarchy. A lot of white women are huge libs who are trying to tear down the patriarchy, whatever that means.
The biggest proponent of the woke cottage industry is actually white women. I mean, it is a huge portion. We'll talk a little bit later in the show, Buck, about all these crazy white women trying to defend dudes participating in women's athletics. And they're like the primary defenders of this absurdity. I actually think white women are, by far, as a group, the most left wing when you actually break down who it's not white men.
But it's interesting, not married white women.
Well, there's a truth to that to a certain extent.
Married women. Now, of course, there are a lot of married white women who are quite liberal, but overall, the data shows that married women tend to be more traditional in their view and often more conservative. I think it's just interesting to note the way that she can speak about a group of people in that way, and that's supposed to be fine. Imagine if you took any other race and said married fill in the blank women, they just do what their husbands tell them, and they're propagating oppression in this country, or they're doing whatever it may be. The ease with which Democrat mouthpieces now across the political spectrum will speak of collective guilt of white people in general, but also more specifically here, white married women. It's unsettling. Like this is the country we live in now, where you're, those white married women are a problem. No, we don't do that here. We don't do that thing in this country. We say people of a certain race are a problem. I'm sorry.